Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Remnant Christian Book Reading Channel. Thank you so much for tuning in to listen to this awesome book. Right now, we're reading The Elijah Project, and we're on the last chapter of part 2, and we're going to get into part 3 right after this video. So, go ahead and stay tuned and be ready for the next video that'll be dropping really soon. Well, when we left off, we saw that, Cody, Willard, they're still trying to find a way to teleport to Zach and his sister and his brother. But we also left off with Monica inside of this house that Jason has. And something weird happened. So if you haven't watched the last video, go ahead and go back to watch the last video, catch up, and get ready, because this chapter should be a doozy. It's gonna be pretty great. So get some popcorn, get your drink, and get ready, because right now we're starting chapter 12, I think it is. Anyways, the last part of part 2. Let's get right to it. It's titled Showdown. Piper stared at Jason as the voice continued to speak.
Make haste. Bring the child to my compound.
Monica took a half step towards Elijah. Yes, sir. She threw a glance to Zach and Piper. What about the brother and sister?
My orders are the same.
Sir?
Dispose of them.
Unsure what to do, Piper bowed her head and began to silently pray. Dear God, help us. Please protect us from...
Stop her,
the voice hissed. Her? Monica asked. Her who?
Her.
Piper opened her eyes and stiffened. Jason was glaring directly at her. Actually, more like through her. She'd never felt such hatred. For a moment, it made her forget what she was doing. Until she saw Zach. He had bowed his head and was also praying.
Stop him,
the voice shouted. Monica searched the room, trying to understand who Jason was talking about now. But Piper knew. Encouraged by her brother, she bowed her head and continued praying. Only this time, out loud. Dear Lord, protect us. Please help us to...
Stop!
Hearing Piper, Zach also began praying out loud. Yes, Lord, help us. Jesus, we ask that. At the sound of Jesus' name, Jason's head flew back like he'd been hit.
Ah!
Both Piper and Zach looked up.
Fools,
the voice shouted.
You dare challenge my power?
The table beside him started to shake. The brother and sister watched, speechless, as the table slowly lifted off the ground. An inch, then 6 inches, then an entire foot. Piper's heart thumped in her chest. She was so frightened, she forgot to pray. Next, the glass ashtray lifted off the table. They hovered a moment and then flew across the room, smashing into the wall directly behind her. Piper screamed. Come to think of it, 1 or 2 of the bad guys did too. But the show wasn't over. Jason began to laugh, softly at first, then louder and louder. As he did, doors around the house began opening and slamming. A mysterious wind came out of nowhere and, ever so slowly, Jason's chair lifted off the ground. His laugh turned into a mocking cackle as he raised his right hand and stretched it out toward Elijah. Piper watched in horror as a swirling red glow appeared in Jason's palm. It grew brighter and brighter. Slowly, it lifted off his hand and floated across the room toward Elijah. Piper wanted to scream, to yell at her brother to run. But she was so frightened no words would come. The orb of light stopped just inches from Elijah's forehead. But instead of fear, Elijah looked at it with fascination. It began to move around to the back of his head, then to the front again, circling him. Then again, faster. And again, even faster. And faster and faster. But Elijah showed little concern. Instead, he started humming again. This time, Piper recognized the song. It was an old-fashioned hymn.
Stop! Stop!
A smile spread across Elijah's face. Slowly, he lifted his arms. He closed his eyes, tilted his head back, and, to Piper's astonishment, the little guy began to sing.
Stop that!
The voice shouted. Piper didn't understand the words to the hymn, like they were foreign, like Latin or something, but she sure understood the impact they were having on Jason. He began squirming, tossing his head back and forth.
Stop that singing!
But Elijah didn't stop. Instead, he sang even louder. He was so happy that his face practically glowed. The red light that circled him faded and then disappeared altogether.
Stop!
Still grinning, still singing, Elijah finally turned to face Jason. Instantly, Jason's chair crashed to the ground, shattering underneath him. The man cried out, but Elijah wasn't finished. He started walking toward him, still singing, still grinning.
Get away!
Jason scrambled to his knees.
Get away from me!
Elijah stretched a hand towards him. Jason scampered on his hands and knees to the far wall.
Stop him!
But Elijah didn't stop.
Stay back!
Elijah continued forward as Jason pressed against the wall, cowering.
Stay away from me!
At last, the boy reached Jason. Elijah was still grinning, but singing softer now.
Stay back!
Slowly, Elijah reached down to the man.
Stop! Don't touch me!
But Elijah did touch him. And Jason screamed as though he'd been burned.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop!
Jason collapsed onto the floor, unconscious. Elijah quit singing and looked down at the man with a sad sort of smile. Everyone stared in absolute silence. Well, almost everyone. Get him! Monica shouted at her two goons. But Silas and Bruno simply stared at her and blinked. I said, get him! More blinking. Get him! Get him! Get! Elijah waved a hand in her direction, and she stopped shouting. It's hard to shout when you fall into the floor, unconscious. Hey! Bruno cried in alarm. What have you done to my Monica? He stared toward Elijah until the kid gave another wave and another body hit the floor. Finally, he turned to Silas. The man raised his hands. Listen, I don't want no trouble. He started backing up. Just let me go our way and... Elijah gave one last wave And you guessed it, one last goon hit the deck. And Jason's guys? Well, they were busy falling over each other while running out of the room as fast as their feet could carry them. Whew. Wow, that was crazy. Intense, but also really cool. Let's continue on. Mom and Dad scrambled up the ridge toward the Jeep. The dogs sounded closer, a lot closer. They arrived and flung open the doors, causing the car alarm to chime. "The keys are still here," Mom cried. "Thank you, Lord," Dad said as he scooted behind the wheel. "Thank you." Ashley, Piper, Zach, and Elijah raced down the porch steps and toward the diner. "Hurry!" Zach yelled, "before they wake up!" "What went on back there?" Ashley shouted. "Does he do that often?" Piper glanced to Elijah and shook her head. "Never, but with him it's always a surprise." "Talk about power." "It's not his," Zach explained. "As far as we can tell, it all comes from—" I know, Ashley interrupted. "God, right?" "He's got more power than 1,000,000 of those goofballs," Zach said. He looked at her and added, "And more love. Way more." Piper threw a look to Ashley. She was nodding and thinking. Definitely thinking. They reached the parking lot in the RV. Zach yanked open the door and was the first to enter when suddenly there was a blinding flash inside. "What happened?" Piper shouted. "It's your laptop!" Zach yelled. "My laptop?" "Well, it's not really your laptop, more like what came out of it." "Hi, guys," a familiar voice said. Pepper stuck her head inside and couldn't believe her eyes. "Willard? Cody? What are you doing here?" "You wouldn't believe us if we told you," Cody said. He was checking his arms and legs like he was glad they were all there. "It doesn't matter." Piper raced up the steps and threw her arms around him. "I'm just glad you're here." The only person more surprised than Cody was Piper. She immediately stepped back and cleared her throat. "What I mean is," she glanced down, obviously embarrassed. It's good to see you again." She stole a glance back up at Cody. The guy almost seemed to be glowing. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what he was doing. "Uh-oh," Willard said. He was glowing too. Not only glowing, but starting to short out. One minute he was there, then he'd blink out. Then he was there again. "I guess I don't have enough power." "What's going on?" Piper asked in alarm. The blinking grew faster as Cody tried to explain. "Another Willard's stupid inventions." "Oh no," Piper groaned. "Oh yes," Willard shrugged. And then with another poof of light, they were suddenly gone. "Nice of them to drop by," Zach smirked as he climbed behind the RV steering wheel. "Those were your friends?" Ashley asked. "It's another long story," Zach said. "But we'll see them again. Especially if Piper gets her way." Piper glanced down, feeling her ears heat up. "Get in," Zach motioned for Ashley to come inside. "But we'll take you home." She took a tentative step into the motorhome. "But that's all the way back in LA." "Zach," Piper reminded him, "Mom and Dad are still in trouble. We have got to help them." "She's right," Ashley said. "I can't put you out." "Well, you sure can't stay here," Zach said. "Not with those creeps." "I know, but..." She was interrupted by the honking of a horn behind them. And more honking. And more. She poked her head outside and Piper joined her. It was Gus the mechanic, sitting in his beat-up tow truck. "Will you kids move that bucket of bolts?" he shouted from the window. "I gotta get this here fellow to Los Angeles and get back for daybreak." "Los Angeles?" Piper asked, exchanging glances with Ashley. "That's a long way." The old-timer jerked his thumb toward the passenger, who was starting to climb into his truck. "He's paying me good money for it." Piper looked over and was surprised to see the passenger was the gray-haired man Elijah had been studying the Bible with earlier. The man smiled and explained. "Gus here says he won't have my car fixed for another 2 weeks, and I need to be in El Monte first thing tomorrow." "El Monte?" Ashley asked in surprise. He nodded. "I'm helping a youth pastor down there who works with families in crises." "I live in El Monte," Ashley said. "Really?" the man exclaimed. "That's some coincidence." Piper and Ashley exchanged a pair of glances. Ashley turned back to him. "Listen, you don't happen to have room for one more, do you?" The man glanced in the truck and then called back. "Sure, if you don't mind being a little cramped." "No," Ashley said. I don't mind. I don't mind at all." As she spoke, Piper slowly turned to Elijah, who sat in the motorhome, humming away. Then she threw a look over to Zach, who was obviously thinking what she was thinking. Mom and Dad clambered into the Jeep. As Dad fired it up, Mom rummaged in the back. "Here's the computer," she exclaimed. "Can you believe it? They even left our computer." "Great." Dad pulled the Jeep into the gravel road. "Send the kids an email. Make sure they're okay and tell them there's a little town named Bensonville on Highway 14. Let's meet up there." "Terrific," Mom said. She turned on the laptop and started to type. Zach stood outside the motorhome. It was harder saying goodbye to Ashley than he thought. "You'll keep in touch?" he asked. She nodded, her eyes already filling with tears. "Come on, boy," the mechanic shouted from the tow truck behind them. "Let's go." "He's right," Piper called from inside the motorhome. "We gotta hurry." "Right." He turned back to Ashley. "I think things are going to work out." Again, Ashley nodded. He cleared his throat. "Well, all right then." Unsure what to do, he turned toward the RV. "Zach?" Ashley's voice was clogged with emotion. He turned back. "Thanks." "No problem." He felt his own throat tightening up. "And what you said about God and all that stuff?" "Yeah." "I'm going to give it some serious thought. I mean, real serious." "Cool." Zach smiled. Suddenly his own eyes started to burn. "Zach!" Piper called. "Well, we'll see you then." "Yeah," she croaked. "We'll see you." Before he knew it, he reached down and gave her a little kiss on the forehead. Nothing mushy or romantic, just a way of saying that he cared for her. Cared a lot. She looked up and smiled as tears spilled down her cheeks. And then, without a word, she turned and dashed toward the waiting tow truck. Once again, the mechanic honked his horn. "Come on, Zach," Piper called. "They'll be here any minute. Move it." All right. He turned, gave his eyes a quick swipe, and stepped into the RV. Piper sat in the passenger seat, working her laptop. "I got news from Mom and Dad." "Where are they?" Zach asked as he climbed behind the wheel. "They're safe. They got away." "All right." They want us to meet them in a town called Bensonville on Highway 14. Perfect. He reached down and turned on the ignition. Bensonville, here we come. What do you think about that, Elijah? Piper turned to her little brother. We're going to see Mom and Dad. Zach glanced into the mirror, expecting to see one happy little kid. Instead, Elijah sat in the back with a deep frown on his face. A very deep frown. And that made Zach nervous. Real nervous. Mom and Dad continued down the deserted mountain road. Although exhausted from the ordeal, they were incredibly excited. In just a few hours, they would be reunited with their children, and that thrilled them. They might not have been quite so thrilled if they realized that underneath their Jeep was a small metal box with an antenna and a blinking red light. Inside a black truck, another red light blinked. On its roof, a large antenna swept back and forth. 2 burly guards climbed inside. A third opened the rear door of the vehicle and waited as Shadow Man emerged from the building. Despite the lights around the compound, his face remained in darkness as he walked toward the truck. Are you sure this is necessary? The guard asked as the Shadow Man arrived. We can find them and bring them to you.
I must come along,
the Shadow Man hissed.
The boy is too powerful to control from afar. I must be near to subdue and control him.
Yes, sir. He climbed into the rear of the truck, which had been specifically outfitted to handle his large form. The guard shut the doors, and the vehicle slowly pulled away. As it passed through the gate, Shadow Man called to the driver.
Do you have a reading?
Yes, sir. They're on the highway 1.7 miles ahead.
Good.
The Shadow Man grinned.
Stay far behind them. We don't want them to know we're following until they meet up with their children.
Yes, sir, the driver answered.
Then we will see who has the real power. Yes, we will.
He chuckled to himself.
Yes, we will.
And that was the end of the chapter. So good, so good. I hope you all enjoyed this reading. I hope you all enjoyed that interesting part with Elijah taking out all those people with just a wave of his hand. How crazy is that? Something crazy is going on, and it has to do with Elijah, and I don't know what it is, but maybe you might know. Maybe you have some guesses. Go ahead and leave them in the comments. And if you really enjoyed this reading, this book, go ahead and please give me a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I cannot wait to get into the next part 3 of the Elijah Project, and that part is titled Trapped by Shadows. Oof, let me say it again with more Trapped by Shadows. It's gonna be great. I cannot wait. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you all, and whatever time you're watching, morning, evening, afternoon, I hope that you have a great day. God bless you, and remember that Jesus loves you. Bye.